Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to GameKheyl. I'm Naveed, aka Barely Average Gaming, and today we have ourselves one of the true legends of the esports combat community. That is Mr. Zed Hunter. Sir, how are we doing today?
Great, man. Great. Good to be here.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Again, we've had all some of the best esports combat athletes here on GameKheyl, and most of them have mentioned ESFL. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the man who was behind ESFL. Everything that you've seen is fruition thanks to this person right here. Before we dive into this interview, just a few quick updates. We did our first reaction video a few days ago in which we saw reactions from the UFC community on the upcoming ESBC game. That's an interesting video. That's the last video that we made. So if you want to check that out, that's right there. We posted it a couple of days ago. And as for other things that we're planning to do, there's a lot of things in store. Again, there's only one thing that I ask you. If you think the content itself is great, just let us know. We can up our game. You can give us your feedback. And if you like what we're doing, all you have to do is subscribe and like, because we keep on posting content like this over different weeks. As for consistency, I think ESFL is one of the biggest leagues out there right now, if not the biggest. Again, collaboration with UFC, having some of the best talent in the world competing at the biggest stage. This man, again, is responsible for all of that. And we are going to dive in, we are going to pick his brain and figure out how he's been able to accomplish what he has. So, Mr. Zach, starting off with, again, like we were discussing a few minutes ago, everything has to have a starting point. I mean, there are a lot of different leagues happening right now, but why is it, and in fact, how did you conceive the idea of having an online league with different players around the world competing on an online stage with commentators from different parts of the world commentating on an event? Again, a lot of different moving parts. There's a lot of responsibility that comes with. So just give us an idea of how you incepted the idea of ESFL, firstly, and secondly, how is it like to manage such a big endeavor, so to say?
Man, so I don't know if too many people knew about this at this point, but there was an esports event for UFC 2 for $10,000, and then they did another one for $5,000. I played in that tournament in Vegas. I lost, unfortunately, but it really, like, just being involved in it really, like, sparked my passion for it. And when we found out that they weren't going to be like EA wasn't going to be holding any more esports events, at least for the time being, it just kind of left a void, right? And I was like, well, if EA's not going to do it, maybe we can do something. Like, maybe it's not like we have a bunch of money, but maybe we can, like, play in front of people, you know, have spectators and whatnot. And so towards the end of UFC 2, starting into UFC 3, I had no idea what I was doing. It was just me and a couple friends that were like, hey, we're going to put this fight card together and we're going to stream people's streams. And at that time, there were no esports leagues for UFC. They had leagues, but it was like you did your fight and then you screenshotted the results and sent them to the owner or whatever, right? So there was no real interaction. And so that's kind of what we started, is that a live event fight card. You know, we started through Discord. We started operating through Discord. And yeah, it just kind of became something. Like, Balian came about and he was like, dude, I can help you turn this into something. And I had no idea what I was doing. If you can go back and watch the show that we had, I think it's still saved on the ESFL's Twitch. The very first one that we ever put on, and you can see just how the production has changed from, like, then until now. And it's just really cool to see. Again, it's not possible without Balian, and then without Bossman, who's our graphic designer. Those guys are the real talent. I'm just kind of, what I tell people is I'm kind of the glue, you know? Like, I just mix and match things, right? I was an EA game changer, so I had some developer support in that aspect, right? And I just kind of put the pieces together. I knew a lot of the big content creators, and bam, there was the ESFL, and I think from that point on, I remember having a conversation with Balian and Bossman, at one point when we did our first show afterwards, and we're talking, and they said, man, that was awesome, you know. And then I think it was either me or Bossman said, man, one day we're gonna get a UFC contract, watch. And then 3 years later it happened. So it's just been hard work and consistency, a lot of trial and error. You know, people don't always recognize, like, we're, as much as ESFL has grown, we're still community based, and we're at the forefront of this thing. But in a way, it's also a burden. Like, we have to make a lot of first time decisions because we're paving the way, you know. And so it's a lot of uncharted territory that we go into all the time. All the time, it's something new that we have to figure out and deal with. But yeah, it's just been hard work and consistency and making the right choices for the most part.
I think you've summarized. In fact, you've kind of watched over a lot of things that actually went in the background. Because again, to summarize 3 or 4 years of experience into a few sentences would be a very difficult job. But again, like you mentioned, having the right support system around you and having the tenacity, the willpower to make decisions in order to innovate constantly. Because again, for a few people, when they see something working out, they would stick with a certain formula. With ESFL, you would see tournaments happening, you would see kumite, you would see different variety of events happening. So that keeps the audience engaged. And again, the kind of numbers ESFL has been able to pull over the last few years. I mean, there are, all respect to all the leagues that are out there. Still, I think the ESFL is still kind of paving the way for all of these other leagues to be able to match to that. So just another thing that I would like to ask you is the fact that ESFL has actually inspired a whole new list of leagues out there. We see a lot of events from Cage Rage, we see events from Primetime, so a few from Gaming Gurus. So there's a few leagues that have popped up recently, all thanks to perhaps ESFL and the model that they've picked. So how do you view that, considering the fact that it is a small community, but again, there might be some toxicity, for a lack of a better term, between these leagues, how they view each other. Also, the league from France, VCL, if I'm not mistaken. So there's a lot of rivalry sometimes, but there's mutual respect as well. But for you, how do you view that?
Man, at first I took it personally. I was like, uh, when Cage Rage was open, there was another one, and they don't exist anymore even. But yeah, I took, because it's like they took the model that we used and that we came up with, and then a lot of them wouldn't even add their own spin on it. They would copy our exact rules from our Discord. They would do everything. Like, it would basically be a copy paste, like, knockoff. You know what I mean? And not Cage Rage has always been kind of original in that regard. I've seen them copy us, you know. But there were leagues out there, and still are, that do that, you know, like, directly. And at first, I would always take it personally. I would always get really upset because it's like, I spent myself, the staff members, the other owners have spent a long time, like, creating this formula for somebody else to just kind of I felt like, plagiarize. But now I look at it a little bit differently. Like we're trendsetters, you know, like, okay, they're doing that because we inspired them to do that. Whether they want to acknowledge us or not is, you know, is irrelevant, right? Like, so some people aren't going to pay their respects, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, whose formula are they following? You know what I mean? And as long as we're doing our thing, as long as we're consistently pushing out content that's good, I think we're gonna continue staying on top. And so I don't have any beef, or I don't get super angry anymore when I see other leagues popping up. I see growth in the community because let's say people can't get into the ESFL, or they may not have heard of ESFL, but you have these other smaller leagues that are reaching out to people that are playing, you know, on the Xbox. It gets people, and then we have people, I never heard of the ESFL until I joined Primetime. I never heard of the ESFL until I joined UFL. And so it ends up, just, it's a good thing for the community altogether, you know? Um, so yeah, at first there was a bit of resentment there, and then now it's just I'm not even shocked at some of the stuff I see, man. Like I've seen it all at this point. It's kind of flattering sometimes, but yeah. And then like I said, once people put skin in the game, uh, when they work to a point for themselves, I don't get upset. I think the one thing that still triggers me is when people try to take shortcuts within the community, you know, if that makes sense. Like again, we mentioned not just copying the format, but maybe copying our rules or copying something from ESFL that they can kind of clout chase off of, you know. But other than that, I'm good, man. I wish them all the best. Like I said, Cage Rage, man, I hope they go to the top 2. I don't know the guy really well, but I see the work he puts in. You know, Primetime, UFL, IXC, all those guys, they put in a ton of work. They've earned their spots. I wish them all the best, you know.
Like they say, imitation may be the sincerest form of flattery. So that might be one of the reasons why they would follow a model that's successful. And also the fact that for a lot of people, whether it's imitation out of spite or out of admiration, as long as it's growing the community, because again, this is another thing that I would want to talk to you about, is the fact that once UFC 4 came out, the viewership of UFC in general dipped down significantly, especially when you look at Twitch right now. At certain points, there's viewership in single digits, which is very appalling considering the fact that we have a lot of content creators out there who are putting in their time. And also this has kind of forced a lot of content creators to move to YouTube from Twitch altogether. So as a person who has been involved in this for a very long time, what do you attribute this to? Is it because of the gameplay? Is it because of the way this product is being marketed? Or are there certain things that have to be shifted around in order for UFC to still remain relevant to the audiences on Twitch?
Man, so that's a tough question because I think there's a lot of variables that go into it. I will ask you this, though. Do you remember the viewership late UFC 3?
Yeah.
On Twitch? And it was pretty low too, right? I don't know if it's as low as it is now. It was down there. I think it's just part of the guy. I think that the majority of the UFC gaming audience is on YouTube. I don't think that there's a big Twitch audience. I mean, we're hitting on our actual ESFL numbered cards right now. We're hitting between 120 and 160 viewers every time. You rewind that back to UFC 3, and we were hitting this late in the game's development cycle. We were hitting between 60 and 100. You know, and that partially is because of ESFL's growth. Actually, definitely is because of ESFL's growth in that time. But I mean, the viewership's there when it wants to be there. You know, but yeah, people. I think people have to find ways to enjoy the game because, unfortunately, the game wasn't marketed towards competitive or simulation players. It was marketed towards casuals, and that's fine. But that's just kind of the cards we were dealt. And so I think I've been told several times that ESFL is the only reason some people are playing. You know, and I know everybody has their different reasons, but the commonality is that they have a reason besides just wanting to play UFC 4, right? And so yeah, I think I wouldn't be too concerned with the numbers, but I do think that there's definitely that factor of the game's not not what we wanted it to be, right? Obviously. Yeah. Did that answer your question?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, again, at the end of the day, there's a lot of moving parts, like you said. Also, the fact that when UFC 2 or 3 came out, Conor McGregor was very relevant. Because of that, a lot of people developed interest in mixed martial arts. And I think his entry and exit from the mainstream fighting, I would say, is also somewhat indicative of how audiences in Twitch or different other platforms have started to go up and down. And for a lot of content creators, that actually presented a challenge. So for us here, as a community representing UFC in esports, I think we are a lot dependent on the way UFC actually performs itself. So maybe that's another reason. I might be wrong at this, but I believe that's another reason that I've been able to observe. Again, like you mentioned, UFC performing itself. There's a very big thing that came about a few months ago, and that is the collaboration between UFC and ESFL. I mean, that's something that made everyone in the community very happy, considering the fact that for the first time in a very long time, the esports community of UFC got recognized for doing something that came out organically. So how was that experience for you when it started? Again, I believe there's a lot of information that you may not be able to share completely, but from a vicarious standpoint, how was the entire experience for you, and how's it going going so far?
So the thing is, the UFC deal did not even come about through the UFC scouting ESFL. It actually came about because there's a one of the mods for UFC is a Skyrim fan, and he was watching Balian's Twitch for Skyrim. Nothing UFC related at all. And then Balian said he had to get off to get ready for the ESFL card. And so then the guy followed him when he hosted ESFL or whatever, and watched the ESFL show, and he said he was blown away. And then so I guess he got in contact with people and then reached out to us, and they're like, hey, you know, we watched your show. Are you guys interested in maybe doing something? I don't know what yet, but we'll figure it out. And then it's like, people don't realize, dude, I probably have 350 to 400 emails sent back and forth between me and the UFC. It is a lot of work behind the scenes, like just getting it and set up. The guys are very easy to work with. It's just there's every little detail had to be planned out, because it's different when it's just ESFL. Like, we'll wing stuff sometimes when we can, because we've been doing this a while. But the UFC, there's a procedure, right? Like, everything needs to be set in stone. We need to have these dates in place so then they can go check with their superiors to make sure that everything works out. And so, yeah, it was a lot of back and forth emails. And so anyway, yeah, once they asked us, you know, do y'all want to do something? We're like, oh, yes, we do. And then we kind of came up with the UFC Esports League. The more they watched our shows, the more that they kind of trusted us to run shows on their platform, if that makes sense. Like, we had to prove our competence to them, which is understandable. Like, you know, if we're taking control of their channel.
Yeah, we
need to prove that, you know. And what also helped that, I think, was my relationship, Balian's relationship with the developers. Like, I've known the developers of the UFC for 5 years now. You know, we went to the events. I talked to them online quite a bit. So I'm sure that when the UFC reached out to EA, they're like, yeah, these guys are cool. You know, we've worked with one of the owners. And so, yeah, just kind of everything fell together, man. And we've created, we got what we came for, you know. Like, we're not done. We're not near done.
Yeah.
But the original goal that we set out to do, we've reached it, you know. Which was kind of far-fetched at the time. I was like, we're never going to get a UFC contract, but that would be cool. And so here we are.
I mean, in retrospect, because when you're in the thick of things, it might be very difficult to see things how they panned out. But when you reflect and when you look back, it's you may be able to realize what you've accomplished. Because for a lot of people, it's just the next goal and the goal after that. But sometimes it's just good to sit back and see what you've been able to accomplish, and then not just sit on your laurels and try to build something even more further. Because over a certain period of time, I think this is something even you may have observed, that a lot of people have tried to replicate what you guys have done, and after a while lost the will or the motivation to continue running it when the things weren't going their way. And also the fact that I was also involved with an esports league that again had some moving parts, had the difficulties in the production that you possibly face as well. So I would want you to share some of the technical challenges or some of the challenges that you faced being one of the league runners, and also again for everyone who is aspiring to copy this model, not just for UFC or any other thing, what are the biggest challenges that they might encounter if they were in your shoes?
So I would say for starters is a good team, right? Like it kind of fell into my lap. It really honestly has, because we were the first and the leading. I kind of got the pick of the litter, so to speak, for partners, right? Balian, dude, like goated commentator. Like I see that dude commentating UFC, like that's in his future, you know. Boss man, he's probably like, I'm not even kidding, one of the best graphic designers within combat sports in general that I know. I would share what his occupation. I'm not going to share his occupation, but that dude, you know,
He's going
he's
places.
plugged in. He's plugged in, and he's good at what he does. I'm sure you've seen some of the trailers that we put out and stuff. And so he's in charge of all that stuff. He's awesome. Now, just recently, Luber Libre, he's another one of our partners. That dude he's kind of allowed me, like he's made me realize some of the things that I could be doing more efficient or better. And just kind of he's kind of taken over in some of the spots that I started lacking in, because as ESFL grows, the business side of things grows.
Yeah.
Right. Like now we have to manage taxes for 40 people, you know, in terms of all the competitors and the staff that got paid for the events. Who's doing the books for that? Who's making ESFL into an actual business? Who's taking care of all that stuff in the background?
Yeah.
And so when I started getting stretched in, he stepped in and he's kind of doing the things that I was doing on the front end, which is kind of talent relations, operations, like all that stuff. And he has done a phenomenal job. And then most recently, Boiler. So we now have 5 owners. Boiler, if you don't know him, dude, that guy is a monster when it comes to like stats. He's a very organized person. And so just some of the statistics that he keeps, his procedures and doing things, you know, it's like 1 in a million there. So with this team, like we have a solid team. I think that's key, because at the end of the day, if you have a bunch of people that are really talented, but they don't work well together, you're going to have a rough time. True. You know, you're going to have a rough time. I think that it needs to be understood amongst everybody within a team, that in business, you got to be a straight shooter, man. You can't beat around the bush. You can't, you can't let things go unspoken, because then that's when resentment happens. True. Right? And the last thing you want is resentment with your training partner. Being in business is like being married, right? You have to have communication, bro. You have to. So I think that is the most important piece to anybody looking to start up, not just a UFC Esports League, an ESBC Esports League, but just a business. Because at the end of the day, if you don't treat this like a business, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Yeah. Now, granted, it's a passion, but ESFL is a business, you know, and if you don't treat it as such, then it's not gonna be one. You know, I want ESFL to generate thousands and thousands of dollars a month to pay these competitors, you know, and take a little bit home for myself too. You know, like that's at the end of the day, with the work that you put in. Yeah, that's the goal, right? That's to do what you love for a living. So, yeah. I think.
Sorry.
Consistency and communication.
I completely agree with that, because essentially this is something that we're trying to replicate here at GameKheyl ourselves, because like you said, It's consistency, having content ready, having a good team. I think this is one of the reasons why, short span of time, we've been able to update our setup very quickly. Again, shout out to everyone who's involved with GameKheyl right now. So again, I think in terms of success, that's something that we aspire to do. It's great to see someone from the community having replicated that model, and also the fact that you have a long-term vision towards what you want to achieve. Because I think if you don't have a clear direction or you don't have a clear target, you are walking aimlessly. So again, it's very refreshing to hear that you would ideally want the competitors to be able to make a living out of this while having a piece of the pie for yourself as well. Because again, you have to pay the bills. If you're happy, you can make everyone else happy as well. So yeah, I think that's one of the key takeaways for me from this. And speaking of something that is of your interest, like you mentioned, your passion for building community, you're also passionate about a lot of other things. One of the biggest standouts is your interest in mixed martial arts or martial arts in general. And I believe a few minutes from now, you will be heading off to a class yourself. So can you just let us into what Zhunter is behind the scenes, behind ESFL? What else does he do?
I am a jiu-jitsu instructor. So I've been doing jiu-jitsu for 12 years now, pretty consistently. My day job is a jiu-jitsu professor. You know, I love what I do outside of ESFL just as much as I love what I do in ESFL. I have, when
your microphone went mute. No worries.
When I started training jiu-jitsu, it was all about, oh yeah, I want to be a UFC fighter. I was young, dude. I was like 19. And I just wanted to beat people up,
Mm-hmm.
And it's given me so much more in that time. And I did boxing, wrestling, Muay Thai, jiu-jitsu, but I fell in love with jiu-jitsu. And yeah, now I get so much fulfillment out of being able to come to my gym, help people. Like if I teach them a move and then they pull that move off, especially kids, man, the look on their face and they're like, I didn't think I could do it, and I did it. It really, really drives me, and yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I do outside of here. I'm a jiu-jitsu competitor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to World in about 5 days. So I'll be traveling to Vegas to compete at Worlds.
Mm-hmm.
Looking forward to that one. Yeah, that's me, man. I can show you around the gym real quick if you want.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a little bit of a mess. I still have to clean up.
I think this is the first little behind the scenes we're doing at GameKheyl, and this looks perfect, bro. I'm not gonna lie, this looks brilliant. So for anyone who wants to get themselves trained by the professor himself, well, you know where to come.
Hold on, this is just one side.
Of course.
There we go.
That's excellent. So how many people do you have at a time when you're conducting your trainings?
How many people in a class, or how many people do we have enrolled in classes?
In general, like enrolled, yeah.
We have about 115.
That's brilliant.
Right now. So I started 3 years ago. Right around this time, I started ESFL. Get water. I started in a closet, basically, in a recreation center. It was about 600 square foot. And again, that's right around when I started ESFL. Today, I have an 8,000 square foot facility and what used to be a warehouse that we fully remodeled. And so, as much as I take pride in ESFL, I take just as much pride in what I've been able to do here. But yeah, when COVID hit, we had I think I had like 35 or 40 members, and I dropped to 10.
Oof.
Like 10 were still signed up with me.
Uh,
Um, and then since COVID, we've been able to amass, me and my partner that we merged, we kind of
mm,
joined together because we both lost members. He had like 40 and then was down to 30 or something.
yeah.
So, since then we've more than tripled at this point, what we had. And so we just keep on trying to grow, man.
There's one thing that I've been able to take away from everything you've done, whether it's ESFL or your Jiu-Jitsu, and that is that you're not just building something, you're building something to last. And it is weathering through the storms, it's getting things done. And from what I've been able to gather, and this is completely personal, not on any other subject, is that you're a very shrewd professional. And that has come across very evidently with everything that you've mentioned. So big props for that, because I am a corporate trainer besides doing GameKheyl. So these are the kind of stories that inspire me a lot. And considering the trainings that I conduct, these are the kind of case studies that I look for. So if you have the right mentality and you apply that in certain areas of your life, be it a passion of yours, be it a day job, if you have the right application, the right tools, and the right setting, I think, and most importantly, the right mindset, nothing is impossible, to be honest. And that is one thing that I've been able to take away from everything that you've shown. So again, there's one thing that you mentioned. There were a few individuals you mentioned, like Bailey and like Bossman. I'm pretty sure there are other individuals you would want to recognize through this platform. People who may have helped ESFL, the competitors, the partners, or the audience in general. If there's anyone you would want to recognize, just a quick shout outs to them.
My wife and kids for putting up with me through all of it. Really though, it takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
ESFL and my gym. I don't work a 40-hour work week. I'm always working. There's no off for me. And it's blended between my personal life and my work. There's no difference,
Mm.
you know? And so, yeah, I mean, definitely my wife for dealing with me working all the time, but definitely Bailey and Bossman, those dudes have been through the thin and thick with me.
Mm.
Luber and Boiler, man, they've put in a ton of work. Like, they might be newer to the team,
Mm.
but the amount of work that they've put in, and it's kind of let me step back a little bit and breathe.
Mm.
I didn't have that space before. Now I can go compete at Worlds without having to worry about ESFL Discord burning down.
Uh-huh.
The competitors, man, the ones that have been sticking around for years, still putting in that work. I have a ton of respect for you guys. It's hard to be at the top, right? You look at all these guys that are winning and stuff. It is harder to be at the top for years,
Yeah.
right? So I have massive respect. Like Swiss, dude, that guy's been putting in work for a long time. Romero, excuse me, Romero,
Mm.
another one of those guys, So like all the guys like that have been putting in work for years. Ton of respect for them. The new guys coming up, we got some killers coming up, some guys making names for themselves.
Mm.
Yeah, I think obviously you too for doing the interview, man. I really like the questions you ask. I don't know if anybody's ever mentioned that, but the questions that you ask are good. You pick the right ones for sure. But yeah, that's just about it, man. My partners, the competitors, other content creators within the scene too.
Mm.
At the end of the day, we're all that we have.
True.
And we might have disagreements.
Mm.
I'm a little less vocal in my disagreements with people, but at the end of the day, we are all we have. So it's
Yeah.
important. Maybe we not always get along, but there's always that support. Because we're in this together. The more views this person gets, it's going to translate, no matter if you like the person or not.
Mm.
let's say Marshall has a problem with somebody else. I bet their recommended still pops up. It doesn't matter if you got a problem with them; they're going to pop up in your recommended.
Mm.
And so, I think understanding that, and the understanding that no matter who's beefing with who in the community, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you're both going to go like this, you know.
Yeah. And there's one thing they can always do. If they have a beef, they can sort it out in an ESFL event. Why not? Controversy creates
Absolutely.
cash. Yeah. Also, I'm glad that you said that you like the questions because I'm an HR professional. If I ask the wrong questions, I would lose my job. So, good to hear that. I think we've come to the business end of this interview. Again, I'm very gracious for the fact that you've been able to show us around the gym, let us into the mind of the founder again of ESFL, letting us know the human side of who you are and what you're all about. Just a few, if you could summarize, again, you are someone I believe who has set very ambitious goals for yourself. So if there's something that you can share with us in terms of your life or when it comes to SFL, if there are any benchmarks that you've set for yourself for the next 5 to 10, I wouldn't even say 5 to 10 years, but like 3 to 5 years, if you see, where do you see yourself and you see SFL going?
Okay, personally, personally, I want to be a world champion, and I want to constantly not grow, always financially,
Mm.
not physically, but just mentally and kind of spiritually. Definitely, as long as as long as I feel like I've grown, that's the point. Like obviously, world championship is on there. I want to be an IBJJF world champion, but
Mm.
the next thing would just be to look back and be like, yeah, I've grown a lot, over these past couple of years. Because at the end of the day, um, you know, how old are you?
I'm 30,
You're 20?
30, 30.
30. Okay, so you're my age.
Yeah.
So if you look at the growth that you've probably had in the last 10 years,
Mm.
imagine what you would have done, where you'd be at 10 years ago if
Of
you're the
course.
same person. And so I always want that wisdom and that growth as early as I can get it. I don't want to be 60
Mm.
with growth that I could have hit in 10 years.
That's true.
Does that make sense? So I don't
Yeah.
know if that's a tangible, I don't know if that's a tangible like benchmark,
Mm.
but it's what I'm looking for, you know?
No, I absolutely agree with that, and I'll tell you why. Because the concept of GameKheyl was something that occurred to me 5 years ago, and when I was 29 last year, this was one regret that I had, that this is something that I was not able to do. And then I thought, is this something that I want to regret when I'm 35 years old? Is that do I want to carry the burden of that on my back and kind of bury myself in guilt? So even though I didn't have the right setup, I stopped giving excuses, started off with a laptop, upgraded the setup just a little bit. We got ourselves a nice camera, a nice microphone. So we are incrementally building what we have, and it's nice to see that progress. And again, if, like you mentioned, if I was going to sit and wait, that's probably going to become even bigger burden on myself. So I like your approach. If you're passionate about something and you want to really get invested into that, so you would want to accumulate as much experience as possible. So by the time you're 35, instead of looking back as to what you could have done, you are focused forward towards what you can do with the time that you have left. So I really like that approach that you've mentioned. As for ESFL, do you have any goals that you would like to share with us?
I want ESFL integrated into UFC, like into the game.
Uh,
I want ESFL. I want to do in-person events within the next 5 years.
mm,
So those are my two goals for ESFL for the next 5 years. I don't like to put like tangible like numbers and in terms
mm,
of like
yeah,
pricing, but I definitely want to do in-person events, and I want integration into the game.
that would
And
be. Yeah.
another one, I want ESFL to be a self-sustaining company.
Mm,
In other words, I love the UFC to death. I love working with those guys, but I would like for ESFL to generate standalone revenue enough to pay competitors and staff
mm.
decent wages.
Yeah, I think if that happens, a lot of interest and competitiveness would enter this league. Like if you followed the example of Dota 2, once the prize pool started building and a lot of leagues popped up, professional circuits started growing. So if there's integration from developers and or from the organization itself, I think that's going to do wonders for this. And also, if you're looking for a backstage interviewer for your live events, let me know.
Gotcha.
All right. So
Awesome,
again,
man.
it was a pleasure, Zach, to have you here. Before we close, any final thoughts?
Uh, oh man, great interview. Again, good questions, great questions. So thank you so much for having me on, man. And I'm looking forward to looking forward to the future.
Absolutely. I think that's the only way we're all headed to the future. And hopefully that brings a lot of joy and pleasure to all of us in the esports fighting community. And for everyone watching, again, we have covered a lot of different content creators out there. We've covered Prioxis. We have had Romero, like Zach mentioned here, and a lot of other content creators, up and coming ones, some of the best fighters in the esports community from T4 Ed Rehan, Zayaf, Ed Parker, Sikvor. We've had all of them here at GameKheyl, and hopefully we'll continue to have more talent coming in. Also, from our native country of Pakistan, we've been able to gather some of the best Tekken players in the world in the form of Fate Khan and also Mr. Awais Hani. Both of them are currently in the process of getting their visas, so we wish them best of luck for that. So if they get the visas for US, hopefully they compete and again bring glory to home. So for everyone watching this, again, it was an absolute pleasure, again, Zach, to have you here. And for everyone watching, I hope to see you guys again soon with another guest and hopefully really soon. So hope to see you guys again. Peace.